She was little, that's all.
That's all. Those 5 words came from an 11-year-old boy lying in a hospital bed. 2 fractured ribs, broken glasses in his lap, left eye swollen shut. Spoken to a man he had never met, in answer to a question nobody had thought to ask him yet. 4 years. 14 reported incidents. Not one consequence. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as one man had designed it to work. But nobody designed it to withstand 317 motorcycles on a Saturday morning. This is Emmett and Porter's story. And what Porter found in those broken glasses would pull down 4 years of the most careful protection money could quietly buy. If you believe every child deserves one person who stays, subscribe and tell me what city you're watching from. Now, back to that Friday evening. She was little, that's all. 5 words. Delivered quietly to a 67-year-old stranger in a Hell's Angels vest who'd asked a simple question. Why? Porter Dust Cloud Vane had walked into room 214 at Dearborn Heights Medical Center at 5:47 p.m., expecting to find a hero. What he found instead was an 11-year-old boy who didn't seem to understand that what he'd done was heroic, who looked at Porter with brown eyes, the left one swollen nearly shut, and answered the question like it was the most obvious thing in the world. She was little, that's all. Porter didn't speak for 9 seconds. He looked at the broken glasses in Emmett's lap. Black wire frame, left lens shattered, right lens intact, nose bridge bent where it had been hit. He looked at the 7 stitches above the boy's left eyebrow, covered by a bandage the nurse had already replaced once. He looked at the cracked digital watch on Emmett's right wrist, still showing the correct time despite the casing split along the lower edge. Then he looked at Emmett's face, at the gap between his front teeth, at the freckles across his nose that looked entirely wrong next to the laceration, and the swelling, and the careful, shallow breathing of a child managing fractured ribs without complaining. Porter reached out with his right hand, the one with all 5 fingers, and set it flat on the bed beside Emmett's hand. Not on it, beside it. Nobody did that for me, Porter said quietly, to the glasses, not to Emmett's face. Not once. He reached into his vest pocket with his left hand and took out his phone. Before he dialed, he looked at Emmett and said something the boy wouldn't fully understand for years. "You're not alone in this anymore. That's done." Then he called Chainsaw. But to understand why that phone call would change everything, why 317 men would drop their Friday night plans and ride through the night to stand on a sidewalk outside a suburban elementary school, you need to understand what happened in that parking lot 6 hours earlier. And you need to understand what had been happening in Dearborn Heights, Michigan for 4 years before that. Friday, October 11th, 3:29 p.m. Ridgemont, 8 Academy, East Parking Lot. Emmett Slade was walking home alone, same route he took every day when he saw them. 4 boys, 1 small girl in a yellow coat. The girl was crying before Emmett reached them. Tyler Mercer, 15 years old, sophomore at Dearborn Heights High, but still returning to the middle school area because his network was there and he'd never experienced a consequence that required him to change his geography, stood directly in front of the girl, blocking her path to the gate. 3 other boys, ages 14 to 15, formed a loose semicircle behind Tyler. The girl was 8, maybe 70 pounds, trying to walk around them, failing. Emmett stopped walking. He had seen Tyler do this before. Twice. He had reported it twice. Both times the reports went to Principal Wren's office. Both times he was told the matter had been reviewed and addressed. Tyler was at school the following Monday both times. The system that was supposed to work had taught Emmett, very clearly, that it didn't. He looked at the girl in the yellow coat. He looked at Tyler Mercer's back. He looked at the parking lot exit 30 feet away, where 2 Ridgemont K-8 staff members, a male PE teacher and a female aide, were getting into a car. The PE teacher made eye contact with Emmett across the lot, then looked at Tyler, then said something to his colleague. They drove away. 47 seconds later, the assault began. Emmett crossed the parking lot. He didn't run. He walked, deliberately. Each step, a choice. He reached the group, positioned himself between the girl and Tyler. He had never met her before in his life. He didn't know her name was Hazel. He didn't know her grandfather was the reason 317 motorcycles would converge on this exact spot in less than 72 hours. He just knew she was small, and there were 4 of them, and he apparently couldn't make himself walk past it. "Leave her alone," Emmett said. Tyler Mercer looked at him for approximately 3 seconds, then smiled. "You're that kid who keeps filing complaints," Tyler said. "My dad handles those." Emmett didn't respond. Tyler stepped closer. "You should have learned by now. Nothing happens when you file complaints about me. Nothing ever happens." "I'm asking you to leave her alone," Emmett said again. The girl in the yellow coat ran. Smart kid. She got through the gate and kept running. Tyler watched her go, then turned back to Emmett. "That was a mistake," Tyler said. What happened next took 90 seconds. The first hit caught Emmett above the left eye, Tyler's class ring making contact, opening a 3-inch laceration that would require 7 stitches. Emmett raised his left forearm to shield his face. The stomping began when he went down. 4 distinct impact bruises on the outer forearm, evenly spaced. The ER attending would circle them in the chart. They would appear in the police report. They would also appear in the county prosecutor's filing 11 days later. Ribs 6 and 7 on the left side, fractured under repeated pressure. 2 boys holding Emmett's arms, Tyler delivering the kicks, while the 4th boy watched the parking lot for witnesses. His glasses flew 6 feet when his head hit the asphalt. A passing driver stopped. The boys ran. Emmett lay on the ground for 14 seconds before he tried to sit up. The pain in his left side made him stop moving and focus entirely on breathing. Shallow, controlled, each breath calculated to avoid pulling at the fractures. He looked for his glasses first. Found them. Picked them up. The left lens was shattered. The nose bridge was bent. They didn't sit straight anymore. He held them in both hands when the ambulance arrived. He was still holding them when Porter walked into room 2146 6 hours later. Room 214, Dearborn Heights Medical Center, 5:47 p.m. The room was standard pediatric recovery. 2 beds, the second empty. Fluorescent overhead half-dimmed. A window showing the hospital parking structure. The specific institutional beige of every room where difficult things happen. Emmett sat up at a 40-degree angle in the bed. Not lying down, because lying down felt like surrender, and he wasn't ready for that yet. His backpack sat on the chair beside him. The broken glasses were in his lap. He was alone when Porter entered. His mother, Sandra Slade, was in the family waiting area down the hall, 40 feet away, where a well-meaning nurse had told her to wait because Emmett needed quiet. Emmett had been alone for 23 minutes. He hadn't asked for his mother to come back. He didn't want her to see him figure out how to hold this. The door opened. A large man in a Hell's Angels vest stepped through. 67 years old, 6'1", moving with the deliberate care of someone with bad knees who didn't let that slow him down. Gray hair, close-cropped. Reading glasses in his inner vest pocket that he hadn't put on yet. A prosthetic left index finger from a 1997 industrial accident at Ford River Rouge. He held a small yellow coat folded over his left arm. Porter stopped in the doorway for 2 full seconds. He took in the stitches, the swollen eye, the broken glasses in Emmett's lap, the cracked watch on the wrist, the backpack on the chair, the boy sitting up straight in a hospital bed, trying not to look like he was in pain. He recognized something in that posture. He had only ever felt it from the inside before. Porter set the yellow coat on the chair beside the backpack, pulled the visitor's chair to the bedside, sat down. He didn't stand over the boy. "That was my granddaughter today," Porter said. "Hazel, she's 8. Emmett nodded once. He hadn't known her name. "I need to ask you something," Porter said. Not accusatory, not rhetorical. He actually needed to know. "Why?" Emmett looked at the window for 2 seconds, then said it. "She was little, that's all." Porter didn't speak for 9 seconds after he heard it. He reached out and set his hand flat on the bed beside Emmett's. Not on it. Beside it. He looked at the broken glasses and didn't look away from them. "Nobody did that for me," he said quietly. "Not once." He reached into his vest and took out his phone. "You're not alone in this anymore. That's done." Then he called Chainsaw. But before we get to that phone call, before we get to what 317 Hell's Angels did with 72 hours' notice, you need to understand what Emmett had already tried. Because Emmett Slade wasn't a boy who stayed quiet. He was a boy who'd been taught, systematically, that speaking up changed nothing. 7 months earlier, January, Emmett had watched Tyler Mercer corner a 4th-grade boy outside the cafeteria. The boy was smaller than Emmett. 9 years old, maybe 75 pounds. Tyler had knocked his lunch tray onto the floor, then stood over him while he picked up the pieces. Emmett went to the school library computer that afternoon. Typed a paragraph. Printed it. Walked it directly to Principal Patricia Wren's office and handed it to the administrative assistant, Donna Cresswell. Donna logged it as received. Gave Emmett a receipt with a timestamp. Told him the matter would be reviewed. The 4th-grade boy's parents were contacted. They were told the incident was under review. Tyler Mercer served a 1-day in-school suspension. The 4th-grade boy transferred schools 3 weeks later. Emmett's report, logged, time-stamped, received, went into a filing cabinet in Principal Wren's office. It appeared in the school's physical behavioral file for Tyler Mercer. It did not appear in the district's digital system. That discrepancy, physical file versus digital file, would become the second most important piece of evidence Talon Hawk would find on Saturday morning. But on that January afternoon, Emmett just knew that he'd done what he was supposed to do, and the boy still left, and Tyler was back in school the next Monday with the same smile. 4 months earlier. June. Emmett was walking home from school when a car pulled up beside him. Tyler Mercer was in the passenger seat. 2 other boys were in the back. Someone threw a glass bottle. It missed Emmett by 3 feet. Shattered on the sidewalk behind him. The car sped away. Emmett's mother, Sandra Slade, called the Dearborn Heights Police Department non-emergency line that night. She filed a harassment report. The responding officer was Detective Craig Pruitt. Pruitt took Sandra's statement, ran Tyler Mercer's name, noted the prior incident from January, filed it as a juvenile harassment report, and submitted it to Wayne County Juvenile Division. Sandra was told the case was pending intake. It was still pending in October. Detective Pruitt had attended Douglas Mercer's re-election fundraiser in 2021. His unit received equipment grant funding administered through the Education Funding Subcommittee. The subcommittee Douglas Mercer chaired. These facts existed in the same system. They had never been placed in the same document. Until Talonhawk did it at 7:47 a.m. on Saturday morning. 6 weeks earlier, late August, Ms. Aldana, Emmett's 6th grade homeroom teacher, 5 years at Ridgemont K-8, the only consistent adult institutional advocate Emmett had, watched Tyler Mercer deliberately knock Emmett's lunch tray in the cafeteria. She also heard what Tyler said next, in front of 14 students. "Next time you file a complaint, I'm going to make sure you can't walk home." Ms. Aldana filed a formal safety concern with Principal Wren that afternoon. Wren called Ms. Aldana into her office the following day and explained that the district's bullying response protocol required a pattern of documented incidents before escalation, and that the current documentation was insufficient for formal escalation. Ms. Aldana kept her own log after that. It had 9 entries. She would give it to Talonhawk on Saturday morning at 7:23 a.m., before the school opened, standing in the parking lot in her coat with her hands shaking slightly because she'd been carrying this weight for 6 weeks and had no idea what to do with it. Her handwritten log was the only surviving complete record of 6 of Tyler Mercer's incidents, because Principal Wren had removed them from the digital system. Friday, October 11th, 4:12 p.m. Dearborn Heights Medical Center, family waiting area. Sandra Slade called 911 from the waiting room after Emmett's diagnosis was confirmed. 2 fractured ribs, 7 stitches, bruised orbital bone, contusions consistent with repeated stomping. The call was routed to the non-emergency line. The dispatcher noted it was a juvenile incident without a weapon and sent it to Detective Pruitt's callback queue. Pruitt called Sandra back at 5:03 p.m. He took her statement. He noted Tyler Mercer's name. He didn't say anything for 3 seconds. Then he said, "Mrs. Slade, I want you to understand that with juvenile defendants under 16, the charging threshold for physical altercations requires evidence of intent to cause serious injury beyond the injury itself. I'm going to file this tonight, but I want you to have realistic expectations about timeline." He had said a version of this sentence before. He knew what it meant. He said it anyway. It was a procedurally accurate sentence. Every word of it was technically true. It was also the sentence that 4 years of reports about Tyler Mercer had been dying inside. Accurate, defensible, and functionally identical to doing nothing. Sandra hung up the phone. She sat in the waiting room chair. She thought about the lease renewal notice that had arrived Thursday, 1 day before the fight, with a 9% rent increase effective in 30 days. She thought about her checking account balance. $847. Before the hospital copay, before the glasses replacement, before the rent increase she couldn't afford. She thought about Emmett sitting in room 214, alone, holding broken glasses in both hands. She put her face in her hands and tried very hard not to cry where the other families could see. Friday, October 11th, 5:47 p.m. Room 214. Porter sat beside Emmett's bed and listened to the boy's careful, shallow breathing. He looked at the cracked watch on Emmett's wrist, the display still showing the correct time despite the split casing, worn on the right wrist like it had been there for years. "How long have you had that watch?" Porter asked. "Since I was 8, Emmett said. "My grandfather gave it to me before he died. The casing's been cracked for 3 years. It still works." Porter nodded once. He understood completely. He looked at the broken glasses in Emmett's lap. "How much do new ones cost?" $340, Emmett said. "Insurance covers 60% every 2 years. It's been 14 months. Porter did the math in his head. $136 out of pocket. For a single mother working 2 jobs whose checking account probably looked a lot like his had looked when his daughter was young. "Tyler Mercer," Emmett said quietly. "He's 15. There were 4 of them today. I've reported him twice before. Nothing happened either time." Porter didn't say anything. He was listening now with the specific attention of someone who understood that every word mattered. "His dad's the county commissioner," Emmett continued. "My mom filed with the police 4 months ago about something Tyler did. The detective said he'd look into it. We never heard back." Emmett reached into his backpack, moving carefully because of the ribs, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to Porter. It was Ms. Aldana's most recent log entry. The cafeteria incident, Tyler's threat, the date, the 14 student witnesses, Principal Wren's explanation that the documentation was insufficient. Porter read it twice. "My teacher gave this to my mom," Emmett said. "My mom gave it to me to keep because she was afraid she'd lose it. I've been carrying it for 6 weeks." The door opened. Sandra Slade stepped through. She'd been outside the door for 4 minutes, trying to give Porter time, unable to stay away longer. She looked at Porter. She looked at Emmett. She looked at her son sitting up straight in a hospital bed, still trying to seem fine, so she wouldn't cry more than she already had. Then she took out her phone. "I need to show you something," Sandra said. She'd found Donna Cresswell's number in the school directory. Called her from the waiting room. Donna had played the voicemail recording over the phone at 7:22 p.m. The voicemail Douglas Mercer had left on Principal Wren's direct cell at 6:54 p.m., 67 minutes after Emmett's injury diagnosis was confirmed. Sandra had recorded it through her phone's speaker. She played it now. Douglas Mercer's voice filled the hospital room. "Patricia, it's Douglas. I assume you've heard about the incident today. I want to make sure we're handling this correctly, which means getting ahead of it before Monday." A pause. "The Slade family is going to file a complaint. Let them file it. You know the protocol. 30 days. By then, we're into the audit review period and nobody's looking at anything else." Another pause. "I need the technology allocation finalized before the 15th. I want to make sure Ridgemont is taken care of. I always take care of the schools that take care of their students." Another pause. "And Patricia, Tyler's file. Make sure what's in the system reflects the documented record. Not every internal note needs to be a permanent record. You know what I mean." Final pause. "Call me back tonight. My door is always open." The recording ended. Emmett listened, looked at Porter, said quietly, "That's the scholarship fund. He controls who gets it. That's why the school doesn't do anything." Porter looked at the phone in Sandra's hand. He looked at the broken glasses in Emmett's lap. He looked at the cracked watch on Emmett's wrist, still keeping the correct time. Then he stood up, picked up the broken glasses from Emmett's lap, carefully with both hands, and set them on the bedside table. Not thrown away. Set down. He walked to the window, looked out at the parking structure, at the October evening settling into that flat Michigan gray that meant winter was coming. He thought about a boy named Roy Vane, who'd taken him in after his parents died in a house fire. Who'd been a man who drank and couldn't manage the distance between what he intended and what he did. Who'd never hit Porter where the bruises would show. He thought about being 9 years old and small for his age, and the specific weight of being a child in a room full of adults and being the only one who understood he was in danger. He thought about a boy at school, name unknown, face half forgotten after 58 years, who had stepped between Porter and 3 older kids outside the east fence one afternoon and gotten knocked down for it and stood back up anyway. Nobody had ever found out that boy's name. Porter had been carrying that name-shaped absence for 58 years. On a Friday evening in October, in a hospital room in Dearborn Heights, Michigan, he found it. He turned around. "I was a boy no one stepped in for," Porter said. "You stepped in for mine. Now I step in for you. That's the end of it." He called Chainsaw back. The line connected on the second ring. Porter said 3 sentences. The first sentence was, "I need every brother within 50 miles. The second sentence was, "A boy with 2 broken ribs just taught me something about courage I should have learned 58 years ago." The third sentence was, "Saturday morning, all 3 chapters." Chainsaw, Mac Voss, age 56, the reason every cop in Wayne County knew the Michigan chapter's name and its rules, didn't ask for proof, didn't ask for evidence, didn't ask what Porter needed them to do when they got there. He just said, "How many kids in that school?" 600, Porter said. "Then they all see us," Chainsaw said. The line went dead. Porter put his phone back in his vest pocket. He looked at Emmett. "You got somewhere safe to sleep tonight?" "We're going home after they discharge me," Emmett said. "You got someone who can stay with you and your mom? Someone Tyler Mercer doesn't know about?" Sandra spoke for the first time since playing the recording. "My sister lives in Inkster. We could stay there tonight." "Do that," Porter said. "Pack a bag for the weekend. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not the school, not neighbors. Nobody." "What's happening Saturday?" Sandra asked. Porter looked at her, at the exhaustion in her face, at the specific fear of a parent who'd been trying to protect her child through the proper channels and watching every channel close. "You ever seen 300 motorcycles in one place?" Porter asked. Sandra shook her head. "You will," Porter said. "By 10 a.m., every student, every parent, every teacher, and every administrator at Ridgemont K-8 is going to see exactly what happens when you hurt a child who has family." He looked at Emmett. "You're part of that family now, whether you asked for it or not." Emmett didn't say anything. He was processing, trying to understand what a Hell's Angel in a hospital room on a Friday night meant for Monday morning at school. Porter saw the question forming. "You're going to school Monday," Porter said. "Tyler Mercer is not. That's a promise. And I don't make promises I can't keep." He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. "Those glasses," Porter said, nodding at the bedside table. "Someone's going to bring you new ones tomorrow morning. Same frames, both lenses. You keep the broken ones if you want. But you're going to see clearly when you walk into that school Monday. That's also a promise." Then he left. Friday, October 11th, 6:17 p.m. Tyler Mercer sent a text message to 2 of the boys who'd been with him that afternoon. It read, "Next time is worse. Tell him." The message was relayed to Emmett's hospital room via a classmate at 6:30 p.m. Sandra saw it, took a screenshot, put it in a folder on her phone labeled Evidence. It would become Exhibit 3A in the county prosecutor's filing 11 days later. Friday, October 11th, 7 p.m. to midnight. Across 3 states. Chainsaw made his first call at 7:03 h.m. Tank, Sergeant at Arms, 49 years old, former Detroit PD, the man who'd trained half the younger brothers in the chapter on how to navigate the system without becoming part of it, answered on the first ring. Tank, emergency ride, Dearborn Heights. Tomorrow morning. Pass it on. What's the situation? Child, assault, 4-on-1. County Commissioner's son. System protected the wrong kid for 4 years. How many do you need? Everyone? Consider it done. The second call went to Talonhawk, 48 years old, former Detroit PD Juvenile Crimes Unit, 14 years. Knew every school administrator, juvenile court intake officer, and police watch commander in Wayne County. Hawk, I need you to pull records tomorrow morning. Early, before anyone gets to their office. What am I looking for? A boy named Tyler Mercer, 15, 4 years at Ridgemont K-8. I need his complete behavioral file, physical and digital. I need the comparison. I need it documented, and I need the name of every administrator who touched those files. Who's the victim? 11-year-old named Emmett Slade, 2 broken ribs, 7 stitches. Took a 4-on-1 beating defending an 8-year-old girl he'd never met. Reported Tyler twice before. Nothing happened either time. Talonhawk didn't speak for 3 seconds. I'll have it by 8 a.m., he said. What else? There's a voicemail. County Commissioner Douglas Mercer to Principal Patricia Wren. Recorded tonight. Talks about suppressing Tyler's file, managing the 30-day complaint window, and scholarship fund allocation. I need to know how that fund works, who controls it, and whether Mercer's using it as leverage. I know a guy, Talonhawk said. Former Wayne County Assistant Prosecutor, financial crimes. He'll know the architecture. Call him tonight, Chainsaw said. Already dialing. The third call went to Coldwater, 55 years old, 18 years as Wayne County Assistant Prosecutor, Financial Crimes Division. Left to open a private practice in 2019. New scholarship fund law, county subcommittee procedure, and exactly how Douglas Mercer's reserve reclassification language would read to a state AG investigator. Talonhawk Conference called him at 7:34 p.m. Cold, Hawk here. I'm looping you into something. County Scholarship Fund. Commissioner administered. Possible leverage situation connected to juvenile behavioral complaint suppression. I need to know, if a commissioner chairs the subcommittee that controls school funding allocations, can he use that as informal pressure to influence how a school handles disciplinary records? Not legally, Coldwater said. But leverage doesn't require explicit language. It just requires everyone understanding what the money means. You said scholarship fund? Dearborn Heights Community Youth Scholarship Fund. Douglas Mercer chairs the Education Funding Subcommittee. Coldwater was quiet for 4 seconds. I know that fund, he said. We audited it in 2019. Clean then. But the audit threshold is $75,000 per transaction. If someone wanted to divert funds without triggering review, they'd structure transfers below that threshold and accumulate them across fiscal years. How would I see that? You'd need the subcommittee's non-public disbursement records, and you'd need the fund's reserve reclassification language from the annual reports. If those 2 things don't match, if money's being reclassified as operational reserve but not actually staying in the fund, that's your evidence. Where would those records be? Mercer's office, or his home office, if he's keeping personal copies. Combination locked filing cabinet would be standard. The reserve reclassification language would be in the official subcommittee reports, but the manual adjustments would be in the document metadata. You'd need forensic access to his laptop. How fast can you file if I bring you that evidence? If it's solid? Sunday morning. Fraud complaint with the county. Petition to unseal any prior settlements involving Mercer, and a request for emergency audit of the scholarship fund. The state AG's office moves fast on education fund fraud. I'll call you tomorrow, Talonhawk said. The fourth call went to Halftone, 36 years old, credentialed freelance journalist and documentary filmmaker. Had press credentials that opened doors and a camera that recorded things people didn't expect to be recorded. Hal, I need a crew at Ridgemont K-8 Academy in Dearborn Heights tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Public sidewalk, legal distance from school property. You're documenting a peaceful assembly. No faces of children. No interviews with parents unless they approach you first. Just the bikes, the school, and the presents. How many bikes? 300, give or take. Jesus, what's the story? System failed a kid for 4 years. We're making him visible. I'm there? The fifth call, and 6th, and 7th, and 12th, and 20th went to brothers across Michigan, then to the Ohio chapter president, then to a road captain in Indiana who'd been at a rally with Chainsaw in 2019 and owed him nothing but rode with him anyway because that's what the patch meant. By midnight, the count was 241 confirmed. By 6 a.m. Saturday, it would be 317. Friday, October 11th, 11:47 p.m. Porter's kitchen, Dearborn Heights. Porter sat at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. Hazel was asleep upstairs in the guest room. His daughter, Dana, Hazel's mother, single parent, night shift nurse at Beaumont Hospital, was working and wouldn't be home until 7 a.m. Porter looked at the yellow coat folded on the chair beside him. The coat Hazel had been wearing when Tyler Mercer and 3 other boys cut her off at the East Gate. The coat she'd taken off in Porter's truck after school and handed to him without being asked. He'd been carrying it since. He thought about Emmett Slade sitting in that hospital bed, holding broken glasses in both hands, answering the question, why, with 5 words that contained an entire moral position. She was little. That's all. He thought about being 9 years old in 1966, and a nameless boy stepping between him and 3 older kids and getting knocked down and standing back up anyway. He thought about Roy Vane and the house he'd left at 17, and the years he'd spent building something that felt like family, because the family he'd been born into had burned, and the family that took him in had taught him that love and harm could live in the same hands. He thought about Hazel, about Dana, about the 31 years he'd worn this patch, and the 100-plus brothers who'd become the answer to a question he'd been asking since 1966. What does it look like when someone steps in? His phone buzzed. Text from Chainsaw. 317. 3 chapters. Staging at 0630. Ridgemont K-8 main entrance. East sidewalk, public property. Talonhawk has records request filed. Coldwater's standing by. Halftone confirmed for documentation. Kettledrum's coming. Porter read the last name twice. Kettledrum, 71 years old. Chapter co-founder. The reason the chapter existed in the form it existed had been a ward of the Michigan state system for 4 years, between ages 7 and 11. Didn't talk much. Didn't need to. If Kettledrum was coming, this wasn't just a ride. This was a reckoning. Porter texted back. See you at dawn. He set the phone down, looked at the yellow coat, looked at the clock on the wall. In 8 hours, 317 motorcycles would converge on a suburban elementary school. In 8 hours, Douglas Mercer would wake up in a world that still worked the way it had always worked for him. By noon, that world would be over. Porter stood up, walked to the window, looked out at his garage, at the Harley inside it, at the vest hanging on the hook beside the workbench. He thought about Emmett one more time. About a boy who'd stepped in knowing exactly what would happen. About broken glasses and a cracked watch and 2 fractured ribs and 5 words that had mobilized 317 men. She was little, that's all. Porter smiled for the first time since walking into room 214. Yeah, he said quietly to the empty kitchen. That's all it takes. Then he went upstairs to get 4 hours of sleep before the most important Saturday of his life. Saturday, October 12th, 6:31 a.m. Ridgemont K-8 Academy, East Parking Lot. Talonhawk arrived first. He pulled his truck into the visitor parking area across from the school's main entrance, killed the engine, and sat for a moment in the pre-dawn quiet. The sky was that particular shade of gray that Michigan October mornings specialized in. Not quite dark, not quite light, just flat and waiting. He had a public records request already filed. Submitted electronically at 11:47 p.m. Friday night to the Dearborn Heights School District Administrative Office, copied to the Wayne County School Board, and time-stamped for legal standing. The request was specific. All behavioral incident records for Tyler Mercer, student ID 8472193, physical and digital, spanning 4 academic years. He also had Principal Patricia Wren's direct office line, her cell number, and the name of the administrative assistant who'd been at Ridgemont K-8 for 9 years and had watched things she wasn't supposed to watch. At 6:34 a.m., a silver Honda pulled into the lot. Donna Cresswell, 52, administrative assistant, got out. She was still wearing her coat. She'd been sitting in her car in the parking lot since 6:15, waiting for someone to arrive because she'd been holding a recording on her phone for 14 hours and hadn't slept. She walked directly to Talonhawk's truck. He rolled down the window. She didn't say anything, just took out her phone, pulled up the audio file, and pressed play. Douglas Mercer's voice filled the truck cab. "Patricia, it's Douglas. I assume you've heard about the incident today." Talonhawk listened to the full recording. Twice. When it finished the second time, he looked at Donna. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. 2 years, Donna said. "I started keeping a log of the phone calls. Every time a parent filed a complaint about Tyler, Mercer called Wren within 48 hours. Every time. 11 calls in 18 months. You have that log?" She handed him a small spiral notebook. 11 entries. Dates, times, parent names, complaint summaries. Every entry followed by Mercer call, date/time, and complaint status. Closed insufficient documentation. Talonhawk read through it once. "Why didn't you report this?" Donna's hands were shaking slightly. "To who?" "Wren's my supervisor. The district superintendent plays golf with Mercer. I called the teachers' union rep last year about something I'd seen in the files. She told me that without direct evidence of policy violation, bringing this up would make me the problem, not the solution. I have 2 kids in college. I can't afford to be the problem." Talonhawk nodded once. He understood the specific arithmetic of institutional silence. "You're not the problem anymore," he said. "You're the witness, and that recording is going to be Exhibit 2A in a fraud complaint we're filing tomorrow morning. Can I have a copy?" "You can have the original," Donna said. "I don't want it on my phone anymore." She sent the file to Talonhawk's email, watched the progress bar complete, then deleted it from her device. "There's something else," she said. "The behavioral files. Physical versus digital. I'm not supposed to know this, but the physical file for Tyler has 14 logged incidents. The digital file, the one that goes to the district and the state, shows 4. I've been watching Wren remove entries for 3 years. She does it herself, late after I leave. But the document access log shows her login. Can you get me into that office? Donna looked at the school building, at the empty parking lot, at the sky getting lighter by degrees. I have a key, she said. 6:47 a.m. The first motorcycle arrived. Chainsaw, Mac Voss, 56, the man every cop in Wayne County knew by name, pulled his Harley into the east lot entrance, parked it perpendicular to the main school entrance at a legal distance from school property, and killed the engine. He didn't get off the bike. He just sat there, drinking coffee from a thermos, watching the sun come up over the east fence, the fence where it happened. By 7:03 a.m., there were 19 motorcycles. By 7:31 a.m., 74. By 8:15 a.m., 163. They parked in formation. Tight, disciplined rows. No one revving engines, no one shouting, no one blocking the street or the sidewalk or the school entrance. Just presence. Chrome gleaming in the growing light. Leather vests bearing the same insignia. Men standing beside their bikes, arms crossed, silent, waiting. Even 23 a.m. Inside Ridgemont K8, principal's office. Talonhawk stood in Principal Wren's office with Donna beside him. The physical file for Tyler Mercer was on the desk. 14 incident reports spanning 4 years, each one documented, each one signed by the reporting teacher or staff member. The digital file, pulled from the district system on Donna's desktop terminal, showed 4 incidents. Talonhawk photographed every page of the physical file, then opened his laptop and pulled the digital records. Created a side-by-side comparison in a spreadsheet that took him 19 minutes to build. 14 incidents. 4 recorded. The gap between those numbers was Douglas Mercer's operational fingerprint. At 7:42 a.m., the office door opened. Ms. Aldana walked in. 39 years old, 6th grade homeroom teacher, 5 years at Ridgemont. She was holding a handwritten notebook. Donna called me last night, Ms. Aldana said. She told me someone was finally looking. I have this. She handed the notebook to Talonhawk. 9 entries. Dates, times, incidents involving Tyler Mercer. Witnesses listed. Direct quotes from Tyler documented. Every entry ending with reported to Wren, date. Status, insufficient documentation for escalation. The cafeteria incident from 6 weeks ago was entry number 7. Tyler's threat. Next time you file a complaint, I'm going to make sure you can't walk home. Was written in Ms. Aldana's careful handwriting, witnessed by 14 students whose names she'd listed. That incident did not appear in the physical file. It did not appear in the digital file. It existed only in Ms. Aldana's personal notebook, kept in her desk drawer, because she'd understood after the first 2 attempts that the official system was not designed to document what she was seeing. Why didn't you take this to the district? Talonhawk asked. Ms. Aldana's voice was steady, but her hands weren't. I tried, last year. I made an appointment with the assistant superintendent. Brought my log. He listened for about 5 minutes, then told me that the district couldn't act on personal documentation that existed outside official channels, and that if I had concerns about administrative procedure, I should address them through the teacher evaluation process, not by maintaining shadow records. What happened after that meeting? My classroom budget was cut by 40% the following semester. When I asked why, I was told it was district-wide resource reallocation. I was the only sixth-grade teacher whose budget was cut. Talonhawk looked at the notebook, at Donna, at the files on the desk. You're both going to be subpoenaed, he said quietly. Probably Monday. Everything you've shown me today becomes part of an official investigation. Your names will be in documents. Are you prepared for that? Donna and Miss Aldana looked at each other. I'm tired of being afraid to do my job, Ms. Aldana said. I'm tired of watching kids get hurt while I file paperwork that goes nowhere, Donna said. Then we're done hiding this, Talonhawk said. At 7:47 a.m., he walked out of the school with 14 photographed incident reports, a 9-entry teacher's log, an 11-entry phone call log, and a voicemail recording that would end Douglas Mercer's career before Monday morning. He also had something else. In the bottom drawer of Wren's filing cabinet, locked, but Donna had the key, was a folder labeled SC Admin Correspondence. Inside, printed emails between Wren and Mercer spanning 3 years. Most were procedural, budget allocations, program funding confirmations, technology grants approved, but 3 emails stood out. The first, from Mercer to Wren, dated 14 months ago. Patricia, confirming full allocation for reading intervention specialist position and extended day program. Ridgemont continues to be a priority in our education funding initiatives. Let me know if there's anything else the school needs. Douglas. The second, from Wren to Mercer, dated 11 months ago, sent 2 days after a parent filed a formal complaint about Tyler. Douglas, thank you for following up on the matter we discussed. I've reviewed the incident report and determined that the documentation does not meet the threshold for formal escalation per district protocol. The matter is closed. On a separate note, I wanted to confirm receipt of the technology allocation. This will make a significant difference for our students. Patricia. The third, from Mercer to Wren, dated 6 months ago. Patricia, I want to make sure Ridgemont is getting everything it deserves. You're doing excellent work there. I'll always be an advocate for this school. Let me know if you need anything. My door is always open. Douglas. Talonhawk photographed all 3. The phrase, "My door is always open," appeared in 2 of them. It also appeared in the voicemail Mercer left Friday night. It wasn't a courtesy. It was a signature. 8:02 a.m. Dearborn Heights Police Department. Watch Commander's Office. Talonhawk walked into the station with a folder under his arm. The watch commander, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, 23 years on the force, had worked with Talonhawk back when Hawk was still Detroit PD, looked up from his coffee. Hawk, it's Saturday. You're supposed to be sleeping. I need 5 minutes, Talonhawk said. He laid out the comparison on Webb's desk. Physical file, 14 incidents. Digital file, 4 incidents. The spreadsheet showing the discrepancy. The witness logs. The email correspondence. The voicemail. Webb read through it without speaking. When he finished, he set his coffee down and picked up his phone. Who am I calling? Webb asked. Detective Craig Pruitt. He's the one who took Sandra Slade's harassment complaint 4 months ago and filed it as pending intake. He's also the one who told her yesterday that juvenile charging thresholds make timeline expectations complicated. Pruitt's off today. Not anymore, Talonhawk said. Webb made the call. It rang 4 times. Pruitt, it's Webb. I need you to come in. Now. Talonhawk could hear Pruitt's voice through the phone, faint but audible. Sir, it's Saturday. I'm off rotation until— I don't care what rotation you're on, Webb said. I have a file on my desk showing a 4-year pattern of suppressed behavioral complaints, a county commissioner's voicemail discussing document management with a school principal, and your name on 2 juvenile harassment reports that are still marked pending after 4 and 7 months. You're coming in. Now. The line was quiet for 3 seconds. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Pruitt said. Webb hung up. "What else do you need?" he asked Talon Hawk. "I need you to know that as of about 10 minutes ago, there are 200 motorcycles parked on the public sidewalk across from Ridgemont K8. By 9 a.m., there'll be over 300. They're not blocking access. They're not on school property. They're not carrying weapons. They're just standing there." "Standing there doing what?" "Making an 11-year-old boy visible," Talon Hawk said. "Because for 4 years, every adult with institutional authority made him invisible." Webb looked at the file on his desk, at the 14 incidents that had been reduced to 4, at the emails that never quite said the illegal thing out loud, but structured a relationship where everyone understood what the money meant. "I'm not interfering with a peaceful assembly on public property," Webb said. "I know," Talon Hawk said. "That's why I came to you first." 8:30 a.m. Ridgemont K, 8 Academy, East Sidewalk. The rumble started low, distant, like thunder on the horizon. Then it grew. The sound of engines, dozens of them, then hundreds, rolling in from 3 directions, Harley-Davidsons, the deep, unmistakable growl of American iron, the formation pulled in with military precision, tight rows, synchronized movements, bikes parking one after another in perfect alignment along the public sidewalk opposite the school's main entrance, 317 motorcycles. The engines cut off almost in unison. The sudden silence after all that noise felt heavy, expectant. 317 men in leather vests stood beside their bikes, arms crossed, silent, faces calm, not angry, not threatening, just present. Halftone, 36 years old, credentialed journalist, documentary filmmaker, stood across the street with a camera crew. He'd been there since 8:15. He filmed the arrival from ground level, the bikes filling the frame, the school in the background, the contrast between the image people expected, chaos, aggression, threat, and what was actually happening. Discipline, control, witness. By 8:47 a.m., parents arriving to drop off kids for Saturday enrichment programs slowed their cars, stared. Some kept driving. Some pulled over. Some took out their phones. One mother, driving a minivan with 2 children in car seats, stopped at the red light adjacent to the school entrance. She looked at the wall of motorcycles, at the men standing silent and still, at the school behind them. She rolled down her window. "What's happening?" she called to the nearest biker. Tank, Sergeant-at-Arms, former Detroit PD, walked to her window, crouched slightly so they were eye level. "A boy got hurt defending a little girl yesterday," Tank said calmly. 4 on 1, 2 broken ribs. He'd reported the bullies twice before. Nothing happened. We're here to make sure everyone knows his name now. The mother looked at Tank, at his vest, at the 316 other men behind him. "What's the boy's name?" she asked. "Emmett Slade," Tank said. The mother nodded once, wrote it on her hand with a pen from her cup holder. "Thank you," she said. Then drove away. By 9:15 a.m., a news van from the local CBS affiliate pulled into the lot. By 9:47, there were 3 news crews. None of them were asked to leave. This was public property. This was a peaceful assembly. This was 317 men standing in daylight, in front of cameras, making a single statement without saying a word. This child mattered. And you were going to see that he mattered. 9 a.m. Ridgemont Park Community Center, 3 blocks from school. Porter and Chainsaw, walked into the Ridgemont Park HOA meeting. 7 board members plus 12 resident attendees. The meeting had been scheduled weeks ago. Porter had checked the agenda Friday night. It included greenway maintenance, holiday decoration policy, and parking enforcement updates. It did not include what Porter was about to put on the table. The board chair, Leonard Hastings, 62, former city council aide, looked up when Porter and Chainsaw entered. "Gentlemen," Hastings said carefully, "this is a homeowners association meeting. Unless you're residents of Ridgemont Park, I'm not here to join," Porter said. He walked to the front of the room and set a folder on the table. "I'm here to inform you that 317 motorcycles are currently staged on the public sidewalk adjacent to Ridgemont K-8 Academy. We'll be there through the day. We're requesting that this board pass a resolution calling for an independent review of the district's bullying response protocol." Hastings looked at the folder, didn't open it. "Mr. Vane. Porter Vane. Mr. Vane, the HOA board doesn't have standing to insert itself into school district disciplinary policy. And frankly, organizing this kind of demonstration in a residential neighborhood raises its own concerns about community safety." Porter reached into his vest pocket, pulled out a folded newsletter. The Ridgemont Park HOA August edition. 2-page spread on Douglas Mercer's re-election campaign. Board chair's name in the acknowledgments section. Mercer's photograph on page 3. Porter put it on the table in front of Hastings. Didn't say anything. Just stood there. Hastings looked at the newsletter. At Porter. At Chainsaw standing by the door, 6'3" and silent. "Can we table this and move to the greenway maintenance agenda?" Hastings said to the board secretary. The secretary called the motion. Porter picked up the newsletter, folded it, put it back in his vest. "Noted," he said quietly, then walked out. 9:34 a.m. Porter's truck, parked outside the community center. Porter sat behind the wheel. Chainsaw was in the passenger seat. "That went exactly how you thought it would," Chainsaw said. "Yeah," Porter said. He looked out at the street, at the October morning settling into the kind of cold that worked its way into your bones if you stood still too long. "I was a boy no one stepped in for," Porter said quietly. "And I just watched a room full of adults with the power to say something, choose the greenway agenda instead." Chainsaw didn't respond immediately. He'd known Porter for 31 years. He knew when silence was the right answer. After a moment, Porter started the engine. "Let's go see Emmett," he said. 17 a.m. Sandra Slade's sister's house, Inkster, Michigan. Porter knocked on the door. Sandra answered. She looked like she'd slept 3 hours. Probably had. "Is he awake?" Porter asked. "He's been awake since 6, Sandra said. "He knows something's happening. I didn't tell him what." "Can I talk to him?" Sandra stepped aside. Emmett was sitting on the couch in the living room, still moving carefully because of the ribs. The stitches above his eye were clean, no signs of infection. The swelling around his left eye had gone down slightly but was now a deep purple that would get worse before it got better. He was holding his broken glasses. Porter sat down in the chair across from him. "There are 317 motorcycles outside your school right now," Porter said. "They've been there since 7 this morning. They're going to stay until everyone who needs to see them has seen them." Emmett stared at Porter. "Why?" he asked. "Because you stepped in when no one else would," Porter said. "And because for 4 years, adults with the power to stop this looked the other way. That ends today." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small bag. Handed it to Emmett. Inside, a new pair of glasses. Black wire frame. Both lenses intact. Same style as the broken ones. "Try them on," Porter said. Emmett put them on slowly, adjusted them, looked around the room. Everything was sharp, clear, the way it was supposed to be. "They fit," Emmett said quietly. "You keep the broken ones if you want," Porter said. "But you see clearly now. That's the deal." Emmett took the new glasses off, set them beside him on the couch, picked up the broken ones, looked at the shattered left lens, at the bent nose bridge. "I want to keep these," he said. "Then keep them," Porter said. He stood up, started to leave, stopped. "Emmett, what you did yesterday, stepping in when you knew what would happen, that's not something I can teach. You already know it. You're braver than I was at your age. Braver than most men I know now. Don't ever think that what happened to you means you did something wrong." Emmett looked up at Porter. "Are they going to expel Tyler?" he asked. "Tyler's not going to be at that school Monday," Porter said. "I don't know if it'll be expulsion or charges or both. But I know this. He's done hurting people and walking away from it." Porter walked to the door. Sandra followed him. "What happens next?" she asked quietly. "We're filing a fraud complaint against Douglas Mercer tomorrow morning," Porter said. "Scholarship fund diversion. The school principal will probably be called as a witness. The police are reopening Tyler's harassment cases, and every parent in that district is going to know exactly what happened when Emmett tried to report this and the system buried it." Sandra's eyes were wet. She didn't say anything for a moment. "Thank you," she finally managed. "Don't thank me yet," Porter said. "We haven't finished. But we will." 52 A.M. Porter's kitchen. The war room wasn't a war room. It was a kitchen table with 6 men around it, coffee going cold, and a laptop open in the center showing things that made every person in that room go quiet. Coldwater, 55, former Wayne County Assistant Prosecutor, 18 years financial crimes, had his reading glasses on, scrolling through documents Talonhawk had sent him at 8:34 a.m. "Okay," Coldwater said. "Here's what we have. The Dearborn Heights Community Youth Scholarship Fund receives $214,600 annually from the county education budget. Douglas Mercer administers disbursements through the Education Funding Subcommittee. That's normal. What's not normal is this." He turned the laptop so everyone could see. On screen, 3 years of subcommittee disbursement records, not the public reports, the internal tracking documents that showed recommended allocations versus actual transfers. "Year 1, Coldwater said, pointing. Recommended allocation to Ridgemont K-8, $71,000. Actual transfer, $71,000. But the fund balance at year-end shows a $71,000 reserve reclassification. That money didn't stay in the fund. It went somewhere." "Where?" Chainsaw asked. "That's what I couldn't figure out until I cross-referenced the county business registry," Coldwater said. He pulled up another document. "Mercer Community Partners, LLC. Registered to Douglas Mercer's wife. Established 3 years ago, same month as the first reserve reclassification. And here," he opened a bank statement. 3 annual transfers of $71,533 from a holding account that traces back to the scholarship fund reserve line." Talonhawk leaned forward. He structured it below the audit threshold. "Exactly," Coldwater said. "The county's mandatory audit triggers at $75,000 per transaction. Mercer was pulling $71,533 annually, just under the wire, accumulated over 3 fiscal years." "That's $214,600, Porter said quietly. "Down to the dollar," Coldwater confirmed. "And it gets worse." He pulled up another file. "I ran Mercer's name through probate court records. Found a sealed settlement from 2016. Wayne County Case Number 1, 6-PR-8847. Plaintiff, disability rights advocate on behalf of Calvin Mercer, Douglas's younger brother. Calvin has a developmental disability. Douglas was named trustee of Calvin's Disability Benefit Trust in 2014. The trust was worth $147,800. Was, Chainsaw repeated. By 2016, it was zero, Coldwater said. Depleted. Douglas documented the disbursements as housing, medical coordination, and transitional support services. The probate court found it substantively compliant, but the advocate filed a civil complaint anyway. Settlement: $147,800 paid by Douglas Mercer personally over 5 years. Completed 2021. The table went quiet. He's done this before, Tank said. He's done this before, Coldwater confirmed. And here's the pattern. Calvin's trust used reclassification language, transitional support services. The scholarship fund uses administrative and operational reserve. Both are real categories. Both were populated with transfers that served Douglas Mercer, and both were structured around review windows. Probate court's annual review for Calvin, county audit threshold for the scholarship fund. Porter looked at the screen, at the numbers, at the dates. Where did he spend it? Porter asked. Coldwater pulled up 3 more documents. Lake Cabin in Harrison Township, purchased 16 months ago through Mercer Community Partners LLC, $156,800. Campaign PSE self-funding contribution for his 2021 re-election, $41,300. FEC filing, publicly available, never cross-referenced against the MCP LLC accounts. And a 2024 Cadillac Escalade registered to his wife, $78,400, paid through the MCP LLC operating account. He closed the laptop. Total traceable spending, $276,500. He stole from a scholarship fund meant for kids after he stole from his disabled brother's trust, and he used his position as county commissioner to make sure no one looked too close. The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then Kettledrum spoke. He was 71 years old. Chapter co-founder. The reason the chapter existed. He'd said 6 words since arriving at the school that morning. That boy goes to school Monday. Now he said 7 more. How fast can you file this? Sunday morning, Coldwater said. Fraud complaint with the county. Petition to unseal the Calvin Mercer probate settlement. Request for emergency audit of the scholarship fund. If I file at 9 a.m., the state AG's office will have it by noon. They move fast on education fund fraud. Then file it, Kettledrum said. 11:34 a.m. The coward. They found Principal Patricia Wren at home. She lived in a small ranch house in Dearborn, 12 minutes from the school. Porter and Talonhawk knocked on the door. She answered in jeans and a sweater, clearly not expecting visitors on a Saturday morning. She looked at Porter's vest, at Talonhawk's face, a face she recognized from somewhere but couldn't place immediately. Ms. Wren, Talonhawk said, we need to talk about Tyler Mercer's behavioral file. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. 14 incidents in the physical file, Talonhawk said calmly. 4 in the digital system. We have both. We have the document access logs showing your login, removing entries. We have the email correspondence between you and Douglas Mercer spanning 3 years. We have the voicemail he left you Friday night. Wren's hand tightened on the doorframe. I don't have to talk to you, she said. You're right, Talonhawk said. You don't. But you'll be talking to someone Monday. Probably a Wayne County investigator. Probably the state AG's office. And when they ask you how 14 incidents became 4, you can explain it to them. Or you can explain it to us now. And maybe, we can help you understand what's about to happen and how you navigate it. Wren looked past them. At the street. At the October morning that had started like every other Saturday and was now something else entirely. "If I talk to you, what happens?" she asked. "You tell us everything," Porter said. "From the beginning. And we make one call to a lawyer who handles whistleblower cases before this turns into something you can't walk back from." Wren stepped aside. They walked into her living room. She sat on the couch. Porter and Talonhawk stayed standing. "How long?" Talonhawk asked. 3 years, Wren said quietly. "Douglas called me after the first complaint about Tyler. He didn't threaten me. He just reminded me that Ridgemont had been recommended for full scholarship fund allocation. That he'd always been an advocate for the school. That he wanted to make sure we continued to get everything we deserved." "And you understood what that meant," Talonhawk said. "I understood what it meant," Wren said. Her voice was shaking now. "I told myself I was protecting the programs, the reading intervention specialist, the extended day program, the technology that helps 600 kids. I told myself that Tyler's incidents weren't severe enough to risk losing that funding. That if I documented them properly, if I followed procedure, the system would handle it." "But you didn't document them properly," Porter said. "No," Wren said. "I didn't. I kept the physical file complete, because I thought— I don't know what I thought. That maybe someday someone would look, that I was covering myself. But I removed entries from the digital system because I knew that's what Douglas was checking. And every time I did it, I told myself it was the last time. That next incident I'd escalate it properly, but there was always a next allocation, always another program that needed funding." Her hands were shaking in her lap. "I knew what I was doing," she said. "I knew it was wrong. And I did it anyway because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't." Talonhawk looked at Porter. Porter nodded once. "Here's what happens next," Talonhawk said. "You're going to give us access to everything. Every email, every phone log, every document you have connecting Mercer to the school's funding allocations. You're going to testify when the state AG's office subpoenas you, which they will. And you're going to cooperate fully, immediately, without hesitation." "And if I do that?" Wren asked. "Then maybe you're a witness instead of a co-conspirator," Talonhawk said. "Maybe you're someone who was compromised instead of someone who enabled abuse. I can't promise you walk away from this, but I can promise that cooperation is the only version of this where you have any control over what happens next." Wren looked at her hands. At the living room she'd lived in for 12 years. At the life she'd built that was about to come apart. "Okay," she said quietly. 1:47 p.m. Porter's kitchen. The laptop was back on the table. This time with Wren's email account open. 53 emails between her and Mercer over 3 years. Most were procedural. Some were not. Coldwater was scrolling through them, taking notes, building timeline. "This is it," he said. "This is the leverage architecture. He never explicitly says suppress the complaints or lose funding. He doesn't have to. The correlation is the message. Every time a complaint is filed, he calls. Every allocation cycle, he reminds her the school is a priority. The funding is conditional without ever being called conditional." "Can you use this?" Chainsaw asked. "I can use all of it," Coldwater said. "The emails establish pattern. The voicemail is explicit consciousness of guilt. The financial records show motive. The physical versus digital file discrepancy shows method. And Ren's cooperation gives us a witness who can testify to how the pressure worked. His phone buzzed. He looked at it, then looked up. That's my forensic contact. He just finished pulling metadata from Mercer's county laptop. Ren gave us remote access credentials an hour ago. The scholarship fund disbursement memos have tracked changes showing Mercer's manual adjustments to reserve reclassification language, time-stamped, attributed to his login. This isn't circumstantial anymore. This is documentary proof of fraud. Porter stood up, walked to the window, looked out at his garage, at the street beyond it, at the neighborhood that looked the same as it had this morning but wasn't. He thought about Emmett sitting on that couch in Inkster, holding broken glasses and new ones, trying to understand why 317 strangers cared about what happened to him. He thought about Calvin Mercer, 29 years old, in a Wayne County adult care facility, visited 4 times in 9 years by the brother who depleted his trust. He thought about every parent who'd filed a complaint and been told the matter was under review. Every teacher who'd kept a personal log because the official system wouldn't record what they saw. Every child who'd learned, the way Emmett learned, that speaking up changed nothing. How many victims? Porter asked quietly, not turning around. Coldwater checked his notes. 14 kids with documented complaints about Tyler Mercer, 4 whose parents escalated to the district, 2 who transferred schools, 1, Emmett, hospitalized. Calvin Mercer, defrauded of $147,800. Every student at Ridgemont K-8 who should have been receiving scholarship fund support but wasn't, because the money was being diverted. He paused. And counting. Because if this had worked, if nobody had looked, Mercer would have kept going. The audit window opens in 12 days. His FY24 reclassification was pending signature. If that closed, the diversion would have been locked into the official record and substantially harder to reverse. Porter turned around. File it tomorrow, he said. 9 a.m. Everything you have. 2:14 p.m. Federal Building, Detroit. The FBI agent's name was Sarah Chen, 38 years old. Financial Crimes Division. She'd been building a case against a network of county-level education fund fraud for 11 months and had hit a wall 3 weeks ago when her key witness, a former school board member, refused to testify without corroborating documentation she couldn't provide. She walked into the interview room where Talonhawk and Coldwater were waiting. I'm told you have something relevant to an open federal investigation, Chen said. Depends on what you're investigating, Talonhawk said. Chen sat down, set a folder on the table but didn't open it. Douglas Mercer, Wayne County Commissioner. Possible connection to irregularities in education fund disbursements across 3 districts. We've had financial surveillance on him for 7 months. We know the money's moving wrong. We don't have the mechanism. Coldwater opened his laptop, turned it toward Chen. The mechanism is reserve reclassification language below the audit threshold, structured across fiscal years, transferred to a shell LLC registered to his wife. We have 3 years of internal disbursement records showing the accumulation. We have bank statements showing the transfers. We have email correspondence showing how he pressured a school principal to suppress behavioral complaints about his son in exchange for continued funding allocation. And we have metadata from his county laptop showing manual adjustments to fund documents. Chen looked at the screen, started reading. Didn't stop for 4 minutes. When she looked up, her expression had changed. How long has your office known about Mercer? Talonhawk asked. Chen's jaw tightened slightly. 7 months. We built the case legally, carefully, by the book. While kids were still getting hurt, Talonhawk said quietly. Chen didn't respond. She didn't have a good response. "We got a boy out of a hospital bed Friday night," Talonhawk said. "You had 7 months. We had 18 hours." The room went quiet. "I need this authenticated," Chen said finally. "If it checks out, it fills a gap we haven't been able to close, and it changes the scope of the charges significantly." "It's yours," Coldwater said, "on one condition." "Which is?" "The victim, Emmett Slade, gets a victim advocate assigned before any interviews, and nobody talks to him without his mother present and without him asking first." Chen nodded once. "Agreed." She stood up, collected the laptop Coldwater handed her. "We'll be in touch," she said. "Agent Chen," Talonhawk said. She turned. "Do right by that boy." Chen looked at him for a moment. "That's the job," she said. Then left. 3:42 p.m. Porter's kitchen. The final scope was mapped on a whiteboard Chainsaw had brought from the clubhouse. Numbers, names, dates, connections drawn in red marker. Coldwater stood in front of it, reading the summary out loud so everyone heard it the same way. 17 victims, 14 students with suppressed behavioral complaints about Tyler Mercer, spanning 4 academic years. Calvin Mercer, defrauded of $147,800. Emmett Slade, hospitalized with 2 fractured ribs after a 4-on-1 assault. Every scholarship-eligible student at Ridgemont K-8 who didn't receive support because $214,600 was diverted over 3 years. Total dollar amount, $362,400. Calvin's trust plus the scholarship fund. Timeline, 10 years. From Calvin's trust depletion in 2014 through the current fiscal year reclassification pending signature. Charges to be filed: education fund fraud, misappropriation of public funds, abuse of fiduciary duty, conspiracy to suppress mandatory reporting, and if the FBI's investigation connects him to the broader network, federal charges under Title I education fraud statutes. He set the marker down. "This wasn't one bad decision," Coldwater said. "This was a system, designed by a man who understood oversight architecture well enough to build fraud into the calendar, who taught his son, through 4 years of consequence-free behavior, that power means immunity, who used a scholarship fund meant to help kids to purchase lake cabins and campaign contributions and silence." Porter looked at the whiteboard, at the names, at the numbers. "When do we take this to the prosecutor?" he asked. "Tomorrow morning," Coldwater said. "Fraud complaint filed at 9:17 a.m. By noon, the state AG will have it. By Monday afternoon, Douglas Mercer will be under investigative notice. By Tuesday, the scholarship fund audit begins. By the end of the week, if the evidence holds, and it will, he's arrested." "What about Tyler?" Chainsaw asked. "Wayne County Prosecutor's Office is filing juvenile assault charges Monday morning," Talonhawk said. "Emmett's medical records, the witness statement from the driver who stopped, the surveillance footage from the school parking lot showing the 2 staff members who left instead of intervening, and the text Tyler sent Friday night, threatening escalation. It's enough for charges. Whether it's enough for the juvenile court to certify him as an adult offender, that depends on the judge. But he's not walking away from this." The room went quiet. Then Kettledrum spoke. "That boy goes to school Monday." Everyone looked at him. "Emmett Slade goes to school Monday morning," Kettledrum said again. "Tyler Mercer does not. That's what we promised. That's what happens." Porter nodded once. "Then we stay until Monday," he said. "Bikes on that sidewalk. Shifts if we have to. But we stay visible until Emmett walks through that door and Tyler doesn't." 4:17 p.m. The arrest. They found Douglas Mercer at his home office. 2 Wayne County Sheriff's deputies arrived at his house at 4:22 p.m. Saturday afternoon with a warrant for seizure of financial records related to an ongoing investigation. The FBI agent, Sarah Chen, was with them. So was an assistant prosecutor from the state AG's office. Mercer answered the door in reading glasses and a cardigan. He'd been reviewing the Greenway maintenance proposal from the HOA meeting. Genuinely, actually working on it, because Douglas Mercer was the kind of man who cared about his community and showed up for the work. He looked at the deputies, at the warrant, at Agent Chen's badge. "I don't understand," Mercer said. "Mr. Mercer, we have a warrant to seize financial records and electronic devices related to the Dearborn Heights Community Youth Scholarship Fund and Mercer Community Partners, LLC. We'll need access to your home office and your county-issued laptop." Mercer's expression didn't change. But something behind his eyes did, a calculation happening faster than most people could track. "I'd like to call my attorney," Mercer said. "You're welcome to do that," Chen said. "But the warrant is being executed now." They walked past him into the house, found the home office, the filing cabinet with the combination lock. Mercer provided the combination without resistance, which meant he hadn't fully understood yet what they were looking for. Inside, 3 years of reserve reclassification records. Mercer Community Partners, LLC bank statements, and a handwritten note in Mercer's handwriting. FY 24 close, $71,533 reserve/MCP transfer pending audit window close. Chen photographed it, bagged it, looked at Mercer. "When was the last time you transferred funds from the Scholarship Reserve account to Mercer Community Partners?" she asked. "I don't know what you're talking about," Mercer said. "Your handwriting suggests otherwise," Chen said. Mercer's attorney arrived 23 minutes later. By then, the deputies had seized the laptop, the filing cabinet contents, and 3 boxes of financial records. Mercer stood in his driveway, watching them load everything into a county vehicle, and said quietly to his attorney, "I was careful. I was so careful." The attorney looked at him, didn't say anything, because there was nothing to say. Careful wasn't the same as legal. And Douglas Mercer had just learned the difference. Saturday, October 12th, 2:47 p.m. Dearborn Heights Medical Center, follow-up clinic. Pitchfork sat in the waiting room of the orthopedic clinic on the hospital's 3rd floor, holding a folder that contained Emmett's discharge instructions from Friday night. The rib fracture protocol required a 72-hour recheck, standard procedure for pediatric patients with multiple fractures. The ER attending had written in careful handwriting at the bottom of the discharge sheet. Sandra Slade's insurance required prior authorization for follow-up visits within 7 days of an ER admission. The authorization line had put Pitchfork on hold for 31 minutes that morning, starting at 8:47 a.m., while he stood in the school parking lot watching 317 motorcycles assemble in the October cold. He'd stayed on hold, phone pressed between his shoulder and ear, one hand in his vest pocket for warmth, until a voice came on at 9:18 and confirmed the authorization code. He hadn't told Sandra he'd done it. He'd just called her at 1:30 p.m. and said the appointment was scheduled for 2:30, authorization already cleared, copay already handled by the chapter's emergency fund. Now he sat in a waiting room chair that was too small for his frame, reading a magazine about hunting he had no interest in, waiting for Emmett to come out of the exam room. The door opened. Emmett walked out first. Moving carefully still, the ribs would hurt for another 2 weeks minimum, the doctor had said, but not holding his breath anymore. Sandra followed, holding a prescription slip and a follow-up instruction sheet. The doctor, a woman in her early 40s, name tag reading Dr. Hassan, stopped in the doorway and looked at Pitchfork, at the vest, at the folder in his hands. "You're the one who called this morning," Dr. Hassan said. "Yes, ma'am." "You stayed on hold for 31 minutes to get authorization for a follow-up visit for a child you've never met." Pitchfork didn't say anything. Dr. Hassan looked at Emmett, then back at Pitchfork. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for getting him here when you did." She walked back into the exam room. The door closed. Sandra looked at Pitchfork. Her eyes were wet again. Not grief this time. Something else. "I didn't know you'd done that," she said. "Wasn't worth mentioning," Pitchfork said. He stood up, handed the folder to Sandra. "Next appointment's in 2 weeks. Same authorization code. Already in the system." Emmett looked up at Pitchfork, at the patches on his vest, at the calm, weathered face of a man who'd spent 18 months as a combat medic in Afghanistan and had learned that the most important medical intervention was often just making sure people showed up to the appointment. "Thank you," Emmett said. Pitchfork crouched. Slowly, his knees weren't what they used to be, so he was eye level with the boy. "You need anything?" Pitchfork said. "You call me. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter what time. You understand?" Emmett nodded once. Pitchfork reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small card, handwritten, with a phone number and 2 words. Pitchfork, Medical. "That's my cell," Pitchfork said. "Your mom has it too now. Next time something hurts, and you don't know if it's normal, you call. Next time you need to get somewhere, and there's a gap in coverage, you call. Next time you just want to ask a question about what the doctor said, you call." He stood up, looked at Sandra. "That goes for you too." Then he walked to the elevator and pressed the button and didn't look back. Saturday, October 12th, 6:15 p.m. Porter's Kitchen, Dearborn Heights. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and coffee. The same smell it had smelled like every Saturday evening for as long as Hazel could remember. Porter stood at the counter, pouring coffee into a thermos for the night shift brothers who were staying at the school through Sunday morning. Hazel sat at the kitchen table, coloring. She'd been quiet since they got home from the hospital yesterday. Not scared quiet. Processing quiet. Porter had learned to recognize the difference. She looked up from her drawing, a house with people standing in front of it, too many people to fit on the page, so some of them were just heads floating at the edges. "Pop," Hazel said. "Yeah, baby girl." "Is Emmett okay?" Porter set the thermos down, walked to the table, sat down in the chair across from her. "He's going to be okay," Porter said. "He's hurt right now, but he's safe, and he's going to heal." Hazel colored a section of the sky blue, carefully, staying inside the lines. "He got hurt because of me," she said. Porter's chest tightened. Not surprised. He'd been waiting for this. "No," Porter said. "He got hurt because 4 boys made a choice to hurt someone. That's not your fault. That's their fault." "But if I hadn't been there, if you hadn't been there, they would have hurt someone else," Porter said. "Tyler Mercer hurt people because that's what Tyler Mercer did. For 4 years. Emmett knew that. He saw it happen before. And when he saw them cutting you off at the gate, he decided he wasn't going to let it happen again. Hazel set down the blue crayon, picked up the yellow one. "Why?" she asked. Porter thought about a hospital room, about broken glasses and a cracked watch, and 5 words that had brought 317 men to a school on a Saturday morning. "Because you were little," Porter said. "That's all." Hazel looked at him, at the specific way her grandfather said those words, like they meant more than what they sounded like. Can I meet him? Hazel asked. When he's ready, Porter said. When the ribs don't hurt so much, and school starts again and things settle down. You'll meet him. And I can say thank you? You can say whatever you want to say. Hazel went back to coloring. Porter watched her for a moment, the careful way she chose each color, the way she pressed the crayon to the paper with just enough pressure to make it bright, but not enough to break it. She was little. That's all. And for 4 years, the system designed to protect children like her had protected the wrong child instead. Porter stood up, walked back to the counter, picked up the thermos. His phone buzzed. Text from Coldwater. Filed. State AG has it. Monday morning they move. Porter texted back. Good. He looked at Hazel. At the drawing on the table. At the house with too many people to fit on one page. She'd drawn Emmett in the front row, standing next to Porter, holding something that looked like glasses. Porter didn't say anything about it. He just screwed the lid on the thermos and walked to the door and drove back to the school where 317 motorcycles were still standing witness on a sidewalk in Dearborn Heights. Sunday, October 13th. 11:34 a.m. Sandra Slade's sister's house, Inkster. Emmett sat on the couch in his aunt's living room, wearing the new glasses Porter had brought him yesterday morning. The prescription was identical to his old pair. The frames were identical. The only difference was that both lenses were intact, and the bridge sat straight on his nose, and when he looked at the world through them, everything was sharp. The broken glasses were in his backpack's front pocket. He'd zipped them in carefully, wrapped in a tissue, so the shattered lens wouldn't cut anything. He was reading a book, Harry Potter, the 4th one, which he'd started 3 weeks ago and was finally getting back to, when his mother came into the room, holding her phone. Emmett, Sandra said, there's someone here to see you. Emmett looked up. Miss Aldana stood in the doorway, holding a small paper bag. She looked different outside of school. Younger, somehow. More tired. Like she'd been carrying something heavy and had just set it down. Hi, Emmett, Miss Aldana said. Hi. She walked to the couch, sat down on the other end, set the paper bag on the cushion between them. I brought you something, she said. It's not much, but I wanted you to have it. Emmett opened the bag. Inside, a journal. Leather-bound, small enough to fit in a backpack, with blank pages and a ribbon bookmark. I've been keeping a log, Miss Aldana said quietly. For 6 months. Every time I saw something at school that I thought was wrong, every time I tried to report it and nothing happened, I gave that log to the investigators yesterday morning. Emmett looked at the journal, at the blank pages waiting for him. I don't want you to have to keep a log, Ms. Aldana said. I don't want you to be the one documenting things that adults should be stopping. But if you ever need to write something down, something that happened, something you're feeling, something you're afraid of, I want you to have a place where you can do that safely. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a pen. Set it on top of the journal. This is yours now, she said. No one else has to read it unless you want them to. Not me, not your mom, not the school. It's just for you. Emmett picked up the journal, felt the weight of it in his hands, opened it to the first page. Ms. Aldana had written something on the inside cover. Dear Emmett, what you did Friday afternoon was the bravest thing I have ever witnessed. You stepped in when every adult failed to. I will carry that with me for the rest of my life. Ms. Aldana. Emmett closed the journal, set it in his lap. Didn't say anything for a moment because if he said anything right now his voice would break, and he was trying very hard not to cry in front of his teacher. Thank you, he finally managed. Ms. Aldana reached across the couch and set her hand on his shoulder. Just for a second, then pulled it back. "Tyler's not coming back to school," she said. "Charges were filed this morning. He's being transferred to a different facility. You won't see him in the hallways anymore." Emmett nodded once. He'd known that was coming. Porter had promised it. But hearing it confirmed was different. "And the principal?" Emmett asked. Ms. Aldana's expression shifted. Not quite a smile. Something harder. "She resigned this morning," Ms. Aldana said. "Before they could finish the investigation, the school board is appointing an interim principal tomorrow, someone from outside the district. Will they keep doing what she did?" "Not if I have anything to say about it," Ms. Aldana said. "And not if the 317 motorcycles that were outside the school yesterday morning have anything to say about it?" She stood up, walked to the door, stopped. "I'm sorry I couldn't do more," she said. "Before Friday, I'm sorry I kept that log in a drawer instead of—" "You gave it to them," Emmett said. "Yesterday, when it mattered." Ms. Aldana looked at him for a long moment. "You're a better person than I am," she said quietly. "No," Emmett said. "I just know what it's like when the system doesn't work. You tried. That's more than most people did." She nodded once, then left. Emmett sat alone on the couch, holding the journal in both hands, and thought about a filing cabinet in Principal Wren's office where 14 incident reports had been reduced to 4. He opened the journal to the first blank page. Wrote one sentence. "Friday, October 11th. I stepped in. I don't regret it." Then closed the journal and put it in his backpack next to the broken glasses and went to help his mother pack for the move back home. Monday, October 14th. 7:47. A.M. Sandra Slade's apartment, Dearborn Heights. The lease renewal notice was gone. Sandra had checked her mailbox at 7:15 that morning, early, before Emmett woke up, because she'd been dreading the conversation about whether they'd have to move, and found a single envelope from Ridgemont Property Group, LLC. Inside, a letter on official letterhead. "Dear Ms. Slade, after internal review of recent property management decisions, Ridgemont Property Group, LLC, is rescinding the rent increase notice dated October 10th, 2024. Your lease will renew at the current rate of $1,140 per month. We apologize for any confusion this may have caused. Please contact our office if you have any questions." No signature, just a printed name. Margaret Chen, Senior Property Manager. Sandra read it 3 times. Then she called the number at the bottom of the letter. A woman answered on the second ring. "Ridgemont Property Group, this is Margaret." "This is Sandra Slade. I just received a letter about my lease renewal." A pause on the other end. 2 seconds. "Yes, Ms. Slade. The increase notice has been rescinded. Your lease will renew at the current rate." "Can I ask why?" Another pause. Longer this time. "There was a change in ownership structure over the weekend," Margaret said carefully. "The new managing partner reviewed recent decisions and determined that certain rent increase notices were inconsistent with our company's values." Sandra didn't say anything. She was trying to process what inconsistent with our company's values meant, and whether it had anything to do with 317 motorcycles standing outside her son's school on Saturday morning. "Your apartment is secure, Ms. Slade," Margaret said. "You won't be receiving any further increase notices this year." "Thank you," Sandra said. She hung up the phone, stood in her kitchen for a long moment, looking at the letter, trying to understand what had just happened. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "This is Talonhawk, Porter's chapter. The lease situation has been handled. The property management company's limited partnership agreement included a name that appeared in the Mercer Community Partners LLC documents. That connection has been clarified. You're staying put. Sandra texted back, "Thank you." The response came immediately. "Thank Emmett. He's the reason we looked." Monday, October 14th, 8:30 a.m. Ridgemont, K. 8 Academy, main entrance. Emmett walked through the school's main entrance wearing his new glasses and carrying his backpack and moving carefully because the ribs still hurt, but not as much as they had on Saturday. The hallway went quiet. Not the bad kind of quiet, the quiet that had followed him for 4 years every time Tyler Mercer's name came up. A different kind. The quiet of people who'd seen something over the weekend that they were still trying to process. 317 motorcycles. A boy with broken ribs, and a story that had made the evening news on every Detroit area station by Sunday morning. A county commissioner under investigation for fraud. A principal who'd resigned before they could finish asking questions. Emmett walked to his locker, opened it, started putting books away. A voice beside him said, "Emmett." He turned. Jake Morrison, 8th grader, had been in the cafeteria 6 weeks ago when Tyler knocked Emmett's lunch tray and made the threat in front of 14 students. Jake had watched it happen, had done nothing. "I just wanted to say," Jake started, then stopped. Tried again. "I should have said something. In the cafeteria. When Tyler—" "It's okay," Emmett said. "It's not okay," Jake said. "I was there. I heard what he said to you. I didn't know what to do." Emmett looked at Jake, at the specific guilt in his face, at the way he was standing there like he'd been carrying this for 6 weeks and had finally found someone to hand it to. "You can do something now," Emmett said. "Next time you see something, you can do something then." Jake nodded once, didn't say anything else, just walked away. The bell rang. Emmett closed his locker, walked to homeroom. Ms. Zaldana was at her desk when he entered. She looked up, smiled. Not the careful, worried smile she'd been giving him for 6 months. A real smile. "Good morning, Emmett," she said. "Good morning." He sat down in his usual seat. 3rd row, center. The seat he'd been sitting in since the first day of 6th grade. Tyler Mercer's seat, back row, corner, where he could see the door and the windows and everyone in the room, was empty. It would stay empty. Emmett took out the journal Ms. Aldana had given him. Opened it to the 2nd page. Wrote, "Monday, October 14th. Tyler's not here. I am." Then closed it and put it away and listened to Ms. Aldana start the morning announcements. Monday, October 14th. 12:17 p.m. Wayne County Courthouse, Detroit. Douglas Mercer stood in front of Judge Catherine Morrison's bench, flanked by 2 attorneys whose combined hourly rate exceeded what most people in Dearborn Heights made in a month. The charges had been read. Education fund fraud. Misappropriation of public funds. Abuse of fiduciary duty. Conspiracy to suppress mandatory reporting. The evidence had been presented in summary form. Coldwater's filing, the forensic analysis of Mercer's laptop, the 3-year disbursement records, the handwritten note that had been found in the filing cabinet with the combination lock. The petition to unseal the Calvin Mercer probate settlement had been granted at 9:47 a.m. The bail hearing had begun at 11:30. Judge Morrison looked at the evidence. At Mercer. At the 2 attorneys who were trying very hard to argue that their client posed no flight risk and should be released on his own recognizance pending trial. "Mr. Mercer," Judge Morrison said, "you are charged with diverting $214,600 from a county scholarship fund over a 3-year period. The state has presented evidence suggesting this is not the first time you have engaged in financial misconduct involving individuals under your fiduciary care. The assistant prosecutor has filed a motion to unseal records from a 2016 probate case involving your brother, which resulted in a civil settlement of $147,800. She paused. "I am setting bail at $500,000. Cash or bond. You are ordered to surrender your passport. You will not leave the state of Michigan pending trial. You will have no contact with any current or former employees of the Dearborn Heights School District. You will have no access to any accounts associated with Mercer Community Partners, LLC. Do you understand these conditions?" Mercer's lead attorney started to speak. Judge Morrison held up one hand. "I asked Mr. Mercer," she said. Mercer looked at the judge, at the evidence on her desk, at the courtroom behind him where Talonhawk sat in the 3rd row, watching. "I understand," Mercer said quietly. "Bail is set," Judge Morrison said. "Next hearing is November 4th. Court is adjourned." The gavel came down. Mercer was led out of the courtroom by a deputy. His attorneys followed, already talking on their phones. Talonhawk stood up, walked to the hallway, called Porter. "It's done," Talonhawk said. "Bail set at $500,000. He's not going anywhere." "Good," Porter said. "There's something else," Talonhawk said. "The FBI agent I talked to Saturday, Sarah Chen, she called me this morning. The scholarship fund case opened a federal investigation into 3 other county-level education funds in Michigan. Same pattern, same reclassification language, same audit threshold exploitation. Mercer wasn't the only one doing this." Porter didn't say anything for a moment. "How many kids?" he finally asked. "Chen didn't have a number yet," Talonhawk said. "But she said the network was bigger than they thought, and without the evidence we handed them Saturday, they wouldn't have known where to look." "Then we keep looking," Porter said. He hung up the phone, stood in his garage, looking at his Harley, at the vest hanging on the hook beside the workbench. He thought about Emmett Slade walking into school this morning, about 317 motorcycles standing on a sidewalk for 47 hours because a boy with 2 broken ribs had said 5 words in a hospital room, about a system that had been designed to catch exactly this kind of evil and had looked the other way for 4 years, not because it couldn't see, because it chose not to. Porter pulled on his vest, walked to his bike, sat down, started the engine, and rode to the school to relieve Chainsaw on the final shift before they all went home. 3 weeks later. Early November. Porter stood in the parking lot of Dearborn Heights Medical Center, drinking coffee from a paper cup that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. He wasn't here for an appointment. He'd just been driving past and had pulled in without really deciding to. Room 214 was on the 2nd floor. He could see the window from where he stood. The room was empty now. Different patient. Different crisis. The hospital kept moving. But Porter could still see it. The way Emmett had been sitting up in that bed, broken glasses in his lap, trying not to look like he was in pain. The way the boy had answered the question, "Why?" with 5 words that had carried more moral weight than anything Porter had heard in 31 years of wearing this patch. She was little. That's all. Porter had been 9 years old in 1966 when a nameless boy stepped between him and 3 older kids outside a school fence. He'd spent 58 years carrying that name-shaped absence, the specific grief of being saved by someone whose face he could barely remember and whose name he'd never learned. On a Friday night in October, in a hospital room in Dearborn Heights, Michigan, he'd found him. Not the same boy, but the same choice. The same understanding that some things are simple. A small person is in danger, you have the ability to step in. You step in. And the world works very hard to convince you they're complicated. Porter finished the cold coffee, threw the cup in the trash, got back on his bike, rode home. He didn't plan to come back here. There was no reason to. But 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon when the light was starting to go flat the way Michigan November light went flat, Porter found himself pulling into this parking lot again, standing in the same spot, looking at the same window. He took out his phone, scrolled to a message he'd saved from Emmett's mother. "He's doing better. Ribs healing. Back to school full-time. Ms. Aldana says he's participating more in class. He asked if he could thank the brothers in person sometime. Let me know when that would work." Porter had responded, "Whenever he's ready." He hadn't heard back yet. It had been 5 days. That was okay. The boy was healing. That took time. Porter put his phone away, stood there for another minute. Then he got on his bike and rode to the clubhouse where 17 brothers were waiting for the weekly meeting, and life kept going the way life always went. But he carried something with him now that he hadn't been carrying before. Not grief. Not anymore. Something lighter. Something that felt like an answered question. He folded the image of room 214 and put it somewhere safe inside himself. He walked to his bike. He didn't look back. 6 months later. April. Emmett Slade stood in front of the Dearborn Heights School Board at their monthly public meeting, holding a folder that contained 9 pages of typed testimony and a handwritten note from Ms. Aldana that said simply, "You don't have to do this, but if you want to, I'll be there." She was sitting in the 3rd row. Porter was sitting beside her. Emmett hadn't asked them to come. He'd just mentioned at dinner 2 nights ago that he was planning to speak at the school board meeting about the district's bullying response protocol. His mother had called Porter. Porter had called Ms. Aldana. And now here they were. The board chair, a woman named Dr. Ellis, appointed after the previous chair resigned in November, looked at Emmett and said gently, "Whenever you're ready." Emmett opened the folder. He'd been practicing this for 3 weeks, writing it, rewriting it, cutting it down from 14 pages to 9, checking every word to make sure it said exactly what he meant. He'd stopped counting the days since he left room 214. He'd started counting different days. The days since Tyler's charges were filed, the days since Principal Wren resigned, the days since the new interim principal had called him into her office and apologized for what had happened and promised it wouldn't happen again. He was counting towards something now, not away from it. "My name is Emmett Slade," he read from the first page. "I'm 11 years old. I'm a 6th grader at Ridgemont K-8 Academy. On October 11th of last year, I was assaulted by 4 students in the school parking lot. I suffered 2 fractured ribs, 7 stitches, and significant bruising. I had reported the primary assailant twice before that day. Both reports were filed. Neither resulted in meaningful action." He paused, looked up at the board. 5 people sat at the table, all of them watching him, none of them looking away. "I'm not here to talk about what happened to me," Emmett continued. "I'm here to talk about the 14 other students whose complaints about the same person were suppressed over 4 years. I'm here to talk about a system where a physical file and a digital file showed 2 different stories, and nobody noticed until it was too late." He turned to the 2nd page. The Angel's Watch program that was proposed last month. The one that would require monthly audits of behavioral incident files and mandatory third-party review of any complaint that involves serious injury or repeated patterns. That program exists because what happened to me wasn't an accident. It was a system working exactly the way it was designed. And the design was wrong. Dr. Ellis leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Slade," she said, "I want to assure you that the board takes these concerns very seriously. The interim principal has implemented immediate reforms to the behavioral reporting system, and we are currently reviewing—" "I know," Emmett said. "I've read the reforms. They're good. But they're only good if they're permanent, and they're only permanent if someone is watching to make sure they stay that way." He closed the folder. "I'm asking the board to pass the Angel's Watch program as written," Emmett said, "with full funding, with mandatory reporting requirements, with third-party oversight that doesn't answer to anyone in the district. Because the next time a kid tries to report something, I want them to know that someone is actually going to look, not file it. Look." He sat down. The room was quiet for 4 seconds. Then someone started clapping. Porter, standing in the third row. Slow, deliberate claps. Ms. Aldana stood up beside him, started clapping. Then someone else. Then another person. Then the entire room. Dr. Ellis didn't stop it. She let it go for 11 seconds. Then raised one hand. "Thank you, Mr. Slade," she said. "The board will review the Angel's Watch proposal at our executive session next week. You'll have our answer by the end of the month." 3 weeks later, the Angel's Watch program passed unanimously. Funding, $18,700 annually from the general district budget, sourced from the scholarship fund allocations that had been recovered from Douglas Mercer's fraudulent transfers. Oversight, independent third-party auditor appointed by the Wayne County School Board, reporting directly to the state. Mandatory reporting. Any behavioral incident involving injury, repeated complaints, or pattern behaviors would trigger automatic review within 48 hours. Emmett found out the day the vote went through. Ms. Aldana told him during homeroom. Handed him a printed copy of the resolution with his name in the 3rd paragraph. Student advocate Emmett Slade, whose testimony before this board in April 2025 brought to light systemic failures in our behavioral reporting architecture. He read it twice, then put it in his backpack next to the journal Ms. Aldana had given him, and the broken glasses he still hadn't thrown away. He'd stopped carrying them everywhere, but he hadn't let them go. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Some things you kept because they still worked. Some things you kept because they reminded you what broken looked like from the inside. And some things you kept because you'd earned the right to decide when to let them go. 3 years later. October. Emmett. Slade was 14 now. Freshman at Dearborn Heights High. Honor roll every semester since 6th grade. Student council treasurer. Volunteering at the hospital on weekends. The same hospital where Porter had walked into room 2143 3 years ago and asked a simple question and gotten a 5-word answer that had mobilized 317 men. He was in the guidance counselor's office on a Tuesday afternoon, October 8th, because Ms. Chen, the new counselor, hired 2 years ago specifically to handle bullying and harassment complaints, had asked him to sit in on an intake meeting with a 7th grader who'd filed 3 complaints in 4 months and was starting to think nothing was going to change. The 7th grader's name was Marcus. He was small for his age, quiet, had the specific posture of a kid who'd learned to make himself invisible in hallways. Emmett recognized it immediately. He'd worn it for 4 years. Ms. Chen had explained to Marcus that Emmett had been through something similar. that he might have advice, that sometimes it helped to talk to someone who understood what it felt like from the inside. Marcus sat in the chair across from Emmett, looking at his hands. "They said you got hurt," Marcus said quietly. 3 years ago." "Yeah," Emmett said. "And they said people came." "Yeah, like a lot of people." 317, Emmett said. Marcus looked up, at Emmett's face, at the small scar above his left eyebrow that was still visible if you knew to look for it. "Did it stop?" Marcus asked. "After that?" Emmett thought about Tyler Mercer, about charges filed and trials completed and sentencing that had happened 16 months ago, 8 years in state prison, no parole eligibility for 5, lifetime ban from working with children in any capacity. He thought about Douglas Mercer, currently serving a 6-year federal sentence for education fund fraud after a plea deal that had required him to cooperate fully with the FBI's investigation into 2 other county commissioners running the same scheme. He thought about Principal Wren, who'd resigned before they finished the investigation and now worked in a private sector job that had nothing to do with schools. "It stopped," Emmett said. "But not because they were scared of what would happen if they kept going. It stopped because the system finally worked the way it was supposed to. And it only worked because people outside the system made it impossible to ignore." Marcus nodded slowly. "Ms. Chen said you helped write the program," Marcus said. "The Angel's Watch thing." "I gave testimony," Emmett said. "The school board wrote it. But yeah, I helped." "Does it work?" Emmett looked at Ms. Chen. She nodded once. Permission to tell the truth. 78% reduction in repeat behavioral incidents since implementation, Emmett said. 3 other districts in Wayne County have adopted the same model. The state's Department of Education is reviewing it for statewide rollout. He paused. "It works," Emmett said. "But you still have to report it. The system can't work if people don't use it." Marcus looked at his hands again. "I'm tired of reporting things," he said quietly. "I know," Emmett said. And he did know. He knew exactly what Marcus meant, the specific exhaustion of being the kid who kept saying something was wrong and watching the machine process your complaint and spit back nothing. "But this time is different," Emmett said. "This time there's someone watching to make sure your complaint doesn't disappear. Ms. Chen has to file it within 24 hours. The third-party auditor has to review it within 48. And if they don't, there's a consequence. Not for you. For them." He reached into his backpack and pulled out the journal Ms. Aldana had given him 3 years ago. It was full now, pages and pages of entries, some about school, some about life, some about the nightmares he'd had for 6 months after the fight that had finally stopped when he'd started writing them down. "This is mine," Emmett said. "My teacher gave it to me the week after I got hurt. She told me to write things down, things that happened, things I was afraid of, things the system wasn't recording." He held it out to Marcus. "You don't have to keep a shadow log," Emmett said. "The system works better now. But if you need a place where you can write things that are just for you, where nobody else has to read it unless you want them to, you can have this. I'll get another one." Marcus looked at the journal, at Emmett's face, at the scar. "You really got hurt for someone you didn't even know?" Marcus asked. Emmett thought about a girl in a yellow coat, about Porter's granddaughter, about the specific weight of being 11 years old and seeing 4 boys cut off someone small and deciding you apparently couldn't walk past that. "She was little," Emmett said. "That's all." Marcus took the journal, held it carefully, like it mattered. "Thank you," Marcus said. Ms. Chen walked Marcus out 15 minutes later, filed his complaint at 3:47 p.m. The third-party auditor called at 9:22 a.m. the following morning. 2 weeks later, the student Marcus had reported 3 times was transferred to a different school pending disciplinary review. The Angels Watch program logged it as case number 47, successful intervention, 0 repeat incidents. Emmett found out about it from Ms. Chen during a check-in meeting the following week. "He wanted me to tell you thank you," Ms. Chen said. "He said the journal is helping." Emmett nodded once. He'd bought a new journal the day after giving Marcus his old one. Same leather binding. Same blank pages. He'd written 1 sentence on the first page. "October 8th, I passed it on." Then closed it and put it in his backpack where the broken glasses used to be. He'd finally let those go. 6 months ago. Put them in a small box. Put the box on a shelf in his closet. He didn't need to carry them anymore. But he'd kept them. Some things you kept because they reminded you what broken looked like from the inside, and what it looked like to be put back together. Porter Vane stood in his garage on a Friday evening in October, 3 years and 2 weeks after he'd walked into room 214 at Dearborn Heights Medical Center. He was 69 now. The knees were worse. The prosthetic index finger still worked fine. The vest still fit the way it had fit for 33 years. On the workbench beside his Harley sat a phone. On the phone's screen was a folder labeled, "Why We Ride." Inside the folder, messages from people he'd never met. Parents whose children had been helped by the Angels Watch program. A woman in Ohio whose nephew had been removed from an abusive foster home after a chapter in Cincinnati got a call and mobilized in 47 minutes. A teacher in Indiana who'd watched a Hells Angels chapter show up to a school board meeting and stand in the back of the room, not speaking, not threatening, just present, while she gave testimony about a principal who'd been covering for a coach who'd been hurting kids for 2 years. The coach was in prison now. The principal was not. But the principal wasn't working in schools anymore either. Porter scrolled through the messages. There were 43 of them. He'd never responded to any of them. He didn't need to. The messages weren't asking for anything. They were just saying, "We saw. We noticed. We're grateful." His phone buzzed. New message, unknown number. Porter opened it. A photo. Emmett Slade standing in front of Dearborn Heights High, wearing a student council shirt, holding a certificate, grinning. The gap between his front teeth still there, the scar above his eyebrow barely visible now, the glasses sitting straight on his face. The text below the photo read, "Emmett wanted you to see this. He won the county essay competition for youth advocacy. The prize money is going to the Angels Watch Fund. He said to tell you thank you for everything. Sandra." Porter looked at the photo for a long time. He thought about a boy with 2 broken ribs sitting in a hospital bed holding glasses that didn't work anymore. He thought about 5 words that had changed everything. He thought about being 9 years old and a nameless boy stepping in and getting knocked down and standing back up anyway. He'd carried that name-shaped absence for 58 years. It didn't feel like an absence anymore. It felt like a thread, connecting him to Emmett, connecting Emmett to Marcus, connecting every person who'd ever made the choice to step in when stepping in was the harder thing. The thread didn't erase what had been taken. It just meant the taking hadn't been the end. Porter saved the photo, added it to the folder labeled "Why We Ride." Then he put the phone down, walked to his Harley, and started the engine. He had a shift at the school tonight, not Ridgemont K-8, a different school, where a different parent had called and said her daughter was being harassed, and the principal wasn't returning her calls, and could someone please just stand outside during pickup, so her daughter knew someone was watching. 17 brothers were meeting him there at 2:45 p.m. They'd stand on the sidewalk, arms crossed, silent. And a little girl would walk out of school knowing that the scary-looking men in the leather vests were the safest thing in her world right now. Porter pulled out of his garage. The October afternoon was cold and gray and flat, the way Michigan October afternoons were flat. He rode toward the school where he was needed. Because that's what the patch meant. Not that you were the strongest person in the room, that you were the person who showed up when someone small needed you to be strong. This story isn't really about motorcycles or patches or the 317 men who stood on a sidewalk for 47 hours in October. It's about a decision. The decision a boy made when he saw someone small in danger and couldn't make himself walk past it. The decision a grandfather made when he heard 5 words in a hospital room and understood he'd been carrying them his whole life. The decision every single person makes when they see something wrong and choose, in that moment, whether to look away or to stay. If you have ever been the person in that room, the one who reported something and watched it disappear into filing cabinets and bureaucratic protocols and careful explanations about charging thresholds and review windows, I want you to know that you were not wrong to speak. The system failed you, not the other way around. And if you are the person who has the power to change that system, the teacher, the administrator, the board member, the police officer, the neighbor who sees something and wonders if it's your place to say something, I want you to know this. It is your place. It is always your place. You don't need 317 motorcycles to make a difference. You need to be willing to say, "This is my lane," and then stay in it. Emmett Slade didn't stop Tyler Mercer by filing a complaint. He stopped him by stepping in. Porter Vane didn't fix the system by asking nicely. He fixed it by making an 11-year-old boy visible to people with the power to act. The Angels Watch program exists now in 4 districts in Michigan. It's under review for statewide implementation. That program exists because Emmett stood in front of a school board and said, "The system was wrong," and nobody looked away. If this story moved you, I need you to do 3 things. First, subscribe, because there are more Emmets out there, more Marcuses, more children waiting for one adult to decide their safety matters more than the paperwork. Second, share this with someone who works in a school, with someone who sits on a board, with someone who has the power to look and keeps choosing not to. Third, tell me in the comments, not just where you're watching from, but this. Who was your protector? Or if you didn't have one, what do you wish someone had done? Because every comment is a reminder that these stories matter. That children matter. That courage doesn't require a vest or a motorcycle or a road name. It just requires showing up. The broken glasses are still in a box on a shelf in Emmett's closet. He doesn't carry them anymore. But he kept them. Some things you keep because they remind you what broken looks like, and what it looks like to be whole again.